Ever have one of those days where every problem you solve creates two brand new problems? The ancient Greeks looked at that and said, yeah, that's a monster. Welcome back to Myths and Mayhem, the show where gods create problems, kings make them worse, and heroes treat the phrase, there has to be a better way, like a personal insult. Last time, Heracles completed the first of what would become his 12 labors. He hunted down a lion that couldn't be killed, discovered that brute strength wasn't enough, and came home wearing the results. He unlocked his premium tank build. He scared his employer into permanent residence inside of a bronze storage jar and became the first man in history to upgrade his own wardrobe by choking something to death in a cave. Which brings us to the problem. Eurystheus still had 9 labors left to hand out, and if the first monster couldn't stop Heracles, maybe, just maybe, the second one could. Because somewhere in the swamps of Lerna lived a creature that had already solved one very specific problem. How do you lose a fight without ever actually losing? Simple. Every time someone cuts off one of your heads, you grow 2 more. Turns out it wasn't just a monster, it was a life lesson with teeth. Okay, let's check in on King Eurystheus. Still alive, still terrified, still conducting official state business from inside what history politely calls a bronze ceremonial vessel, and what everyone else recognizes as an oversized soup pot. The palace guards had developed a routine. The moment Heracles was spotted on the horizon, somebody would call, "He's here!" The doors would slam shut. Servants would scatter, and somewhere beneath the palace, a bronze lid would seal shut with the speed of a man who had genuinely thought this through. Heracles walked up to the gates, wearing the Nemean lion across his shoulders. Company policy as of that morning had officially changed to, don't let the employee wearing the dead invincible lion pass security. A servant approached carrying a scroll, very cautiously, the way a person approaches an active volcano holding a can of gas. He stopped several yards away. His Majesty wishes to congratulate you. From a safe distance, a muffled voice echoes up from somewhere underground. Excellent work! Truly! Please stay out there! I'm already out here. Good! Stay more out there! The servant unrolled a second scroll and swallowed before reading it. For your next labor, you are to travel to the swamps of Lerna and kill the Hydra. Silence. Even the birds seemed uncomfortable. Heracles simply rolled up the scroll and said, "So when do I leave?" "That's your only question? I assume it's killing people." "Yeah, obviously." "I assume I'm supposed to stop it." "Yep." "Then I should probably get going." From inside the jar, a small, hopeful voice added one final instruction. "And don't come back wearing this one either." Heracles honestly just laughed. Somewhere beneath the palace, Eurystheus allowed himself a moment of quiet optimism. Finally, a monster that couldn't simply be wrestled into submission. Or so he thought. Now, if you wanted to design the least inviting vacation destination in ancient Greece, you would land pretty quickly on Lerna. Picture a swamp. Now, make it smell worse. Then, add a permanent layer of poisonous mist so thick that just standing downwind of it could end your afternoon, your evening, and technically the rest of your life. Cover everything with dead trees and bottomless black water. Then ask yourself, what if we also added a monster? Congratulations, you just invented Greek real estate. If Google Maps had existed in antiquity, the whole region would have gotten one red pin that said, maybe just don't. If Lerna had a Yelp page, it would have had a 1-star review that read, inhaled the air and immediately passed away. Ancient Greeks believed that Lerna was one of the actual entrances to the underworld. And honestly, after looking at it, it kind of checks out. Birds avoided it. Mosquitoes avoided it. The local property value was currently sitting at negative $400. Heracles stopped at the nearest village where the days since last tragedy sign had been permanently welded at 0. An old woman stepped forward, pointing a shaky finger directly into the toxic fog. You can't kill it. It breathes pure battery acid, and it has way too many heads. Those are standard monster metrics. Is there anything else? She thought for a long moment. Yeah, it's got what you might call a toxic personality. I appreciate the tactical briefing. For what it's worth, Heracles wasn't traveling alone. His nephew Iolaus had come along as his charioteer. Now think of Iolaus as the practical, level-headed production assistant to Heracles' completely unhinged lead actor. Now Iolaus, he wasn't chasing glory. He wasn't trying to become a legend. He wasn't trying to fulfill a prophecy. He simply saw someone that he cared about walking into certain danger and figured somebody ought to be there when things inevitably got complicated. At the moment, he was sitting at the edge of the swamp with a horse and supplies, and a growing suspicion that this was going to be a much longer day than advertised. Now the Hydra wasn't just an oversized snake. That would have been manageable. This thing came from the single worst family tree in Greek mythology. Its parents were Typhon and Echidna, the father and mother of monsters, which means that the Hydra wasn't just another creature. It was the little sibling of a third of the cast that we've already met, and some that we're going to meet soon. The Nemean lion, sibling. Cerberus, sibling. The Chimera, sibling. If Greek mythology had family reunions, no insurance company on Earth would agree to sponsor one. Ancient writers couldn't even agree on how many heads the Hydra had. Some said 6, some said 9. A few apparently lost track partway through and just wrote a lot. There is one thing that they did agree on, however. Its breath poisoned the air. Its blood was lethal on contact, and one of its heads couldn't die at all, because regular impossible apparently wasn't impossible enough. Somewhere on Olympus, Alina leaned forward over the edge of a cloud and said, "Do you think he figures it out?" Ares, mid-grape, didn't even look up. "I hope not. You always say that. And I'm usually entertained." Heracles reached the center of the swamp. The mist thickened. The air went heavy. Every breath tasted wrong. The water moved. One head emerged, then another, then another. The swamp itself had seemed to wake up. Heracles started counting heads and gave up, decided it didn't matter. Every head watched him independently, like a panel voting on which part of him was gonna taste the best. Luckily, the lion had changed him. A few weeks ago, he would have charged immediately. Now, he watched. He waited, which for Heracles counted as measurable personal growth. Eventually, one head launched. Heracles sidestepped and answered with one clean swing. The head hit the mud. Efficient, textbook, the exact kind of strike that a sword instructor dreams about. Heracles took a step back. Well, that wasn't so... Before he could finish the sentence, 2 new heads erupted from the stump. Heracles froze. The 2 new heads just looked at him. The severed one in the mud almost looked disappointed on his behalf. That's illegal. The Hydra hissed. It sounded uncomfortably like laughter. Heracles attacked again. Clean strike, head down, 2 more heads up. Again, same result. Again and again. At this point, the Hydra was multiplying faster than a rumor in a middle school cafeteria. Heracles stepped back, sword still raised, trying to process what was happening. Every successful attack was making the situation objectively worse. And now If you've been watching this series for any length of time, you probably already recognize the symptoms. This has textbook AGHS written all over it, ancient Greek hero syndrome. The uncontrollable urge to keep doing exactly the same thing, only harder, because surely this time will work. Unfortunately for Heracles, the Hydra had apparently majored in treating AGHS. It rewarded every bad decision with 2 brand new problems. Now think about that for just a second. Not just here, but in life. Ever argue with someone who already decided that they were right before you even opened your mouth? Every point you made somehow creates 2 brand new arguments. Ever ignore a small problem because you were too busy to deal with it, and now that small problem has friends? Ever try to fix stress by adding more work? Congratulations, you just fought the Hydra. The Greeks understood something we still forget constantly. Not every problem rewards aggression. Some problems feed on it. Heracles stopped moving, the sword at his side. The Hydra just watched him, every head swaying, almost curious. This part was new. Up until now, everyone who had ever faced this thing had done the exact same thing. Attack, panic, attack harder, die. Heracles was the first to just stop. Not from fear, but because for the second labor in a row, the monster had forced him to think before it would let him win. He looked at the pattern. Every severed head, every fresh neck, every attack making the math worse instead of better. Somewhere in the mud, the strategy had become the actual problem. Somewhere on Olympus, Athena leaned forward. He stopped. Well, it took him long enough. Now, if you thought Hera was going to allow him to try to think through this in peace, you haven't been paying attention. She wasn't about to let Heracles solve another impossible problem without making it just a little bit worse first. So she sent help, not for Heracles, for the Hydra. Out of the muddy water crawled a giant crab, marching forward with the total unearned confidence of a creature that has never once considered the concept of losing. Imagine fighting an immortal, multiplying swamp dragon, and a giant crab suddenly decides that it wants to audition to become the main character. It marched into the battle like destiny itself had finally called. Stand back, everyone! I got this! He grabbed Heracles' ankle. Heracles just looked down. And the crab, it looked up. Really, my guy, read the room. Heracles stepped on it. Crunch! A half second later, the crab learned an important lesson. Not everyone who gets a dramatic entrance gets a second scene. Now, to Hera's credit, she admired the effort. She eventually placed the crab among the stars as the constellation Cancer, which means that every time you check your horoscope, you're honoring the single least successful assassination attempt in mythology. Meanwhile, the Hydra was still trying very hard to eat Heracles. Hours passed. Mud covered everything. Heracles' arms were getting heavy. The Hydra wasn't winning, exactly, but neither was Heracles. Sometimes being stuck doesn't mean you're losing. It means that you've reached the edge of what you currently know how to do. And that's usually where growth starts. Through the mist came a familiar shape, Iolaus. Now, I love Iolaus because he ignores one of Greek mythology's favorite rules. He wasn't trying to become the hero. He wasn't chasing glory or a prophecy or a chosen one arc. He just saw someone that he loved struggling and walked toward it. And that's rare, even now. No speech, no dramatic music, just, you look like you could use some help. Isn't that obvious? Iolaus glanced at the pile of snakeheads. I've seen better days, and so have you. If episode 11 taught us anything, it's that the greatest heroes in our lives aren't always the ones who rescue us. Sometimes they're the ones who refuse to leave us alone in the swamp. Iolaus watched for a few moments without saying anything. Heracles cut off another head. 2 more appeared. Cut. 2 more. Then Iolaus frowned. Wait! What? The heads. They're not growing back. Yes, they are. Look. No, they're not. The wound is. They both stared at the neck, where a fresh pair of heads had just finished forming. Not the heads. The wound. The wound was healing, and every time it healed, it split into 2. Heracles looked at Iolaus, and Iolaus looked back. Then almost at the exact same moment, they both looked at the campfire that they had built that morning and said, "Fire!" The Hydra hissed. For the first time all day, it sounded almost nervous. Iolaus didn't waste a second. He grabbed the burning branch from the fire and ran straight into the fight. The rhythm changed immediately. Cut, burn, move, repeat. Heracles sliced a head free, and before the wound could do whatever it was about to do, Iolaus pressed the torch straight against the open neck. Smoke and an unforgettable smell, and then nothing. No regrowth, sealed shut. Heracles looked over. Well, I wish we'd thought about this about 20 heads ago. I didn't want to ruin your cardio. You seemed really committed to swinging a heavy object at a problem that clearly feeds on it. Fair enough. Turns out that arts and crafts has quietly been carrying Greek civilization this whole time. Think about it. Episode 9, a ball of string defeated the labyrinth. Now, a burning stick is defeating an immortal swamp monster. So, pay attention in arts and crafts class, kids. The Greeks were trying to tell us something. Head after head disappeared, and for the first time since the fight started, the Hydra was losing ground instead of gaining it. Somewhere on Olympus, Ares crossed his arms. I liked it better when he was punching things. He's learning. That's worse. Eventually, only one head remained, the immortal one, because Greek mythology has never once looked at a problem and thought, that's complicated enough. Heracles cut it free. It hit the ground, opened its eyes, and immediately tried to bite him. He stared at it. You've got to be kidding me. It wasn't kidding. He picked it up by the back of the neck, still snapping, and carried it to the edge of the swamp, and then rolled an enormous boulder on top of it. The ground shook. The hissing continued from beneath the stone. Still alive, still furious, just no longer anyone else's problem, which is its own small lesson tucked neatly inside of this labor. Not every problem gets destroyed. Some you have to just make sure can never reach you again. With the fight over, Heracles looked at what was left over. Broken reeds, burned trees, pools of thick black venom cooling in the mud. Now, most people would look at the deadliest poison in Greece and think, we should probably leave that alone. Heracles looked at it and thought, I got a good idea. He knelt down and carefully dipped every arrow he owned into the Hydra's blood. Please don't try this at home or coat any of your household items in mythical snake venom on the off chance anybody watching was actually taking notes. The lion became his armor. The Hydra became his arrows. The obstacle became the equipment again. The Greeks loved that kind of irony, and I think there's something real hiding in it. Sometimes the worst things that you survive end up handing you exactly what the next fight requires. Not because the pain was good, it wasn't, but because getting through it changes what you're carrying. The arrows would go on to make Heracles the deadliest hero ever. And they would also come back to haunt him later in a way that we're absolutely not getting into today. Just file that away for another episode. Now, back in Mycenae, the guards saw him coming long before he reached the gate. He's back! I'll get the jar. Deep beneath the palace, a bronze lid cracked open half an inch. A nervous eye appeared. In the courtyard, the servant approached Heracles with the scroll, keeping a professional distance from those arrows. His Majesty congratulates you on completing the labor. Well, that's generous. There's just one small administrative issue. Oh? This labor has been disqualified per the terms and conditions. All labors must be completed by the assigned hero without third-party assistance. You received operational assistance from your nephew. Therefore, This task does not count. Silence. Imagine surviving the deadliest swamp monster in Greece only to lose the paperwork. Wait, there were terms and conditions? From inside the jar, a muffled voice calls out. There are now! You just made those up. Leadership is about adapting. I don't think that's what leadership actually means. No, I don't think it's what it means either. Fair to the myth itself, this part is real. Eurystheus genuinely refused to count the Hydra because Iolaus helped, which is like your boss watching you save the entire company and responding, unfortunately, you filled out the paperwork incorrectly. It's also historically the actual reason this ends up being the 12 labors instead of the 10 labors, because 2 of them get thrown out on technicalities. We'll get to the other one later, but for now, the Hydra was dead. The people in Lerna were safe, and everyone involved knew exactly who had won. Even if one of them needed a bronze security blanket / jar to admit it. I've always liked that the Greeks put the Hydra right after the lion, because these aren't just 12 random monster fights back to back to back. They're building on each other. The lion taught Heracles that not every problem gets solved the way that you've always solved problems. The Hydra built on that lesson. Strength is what got him into the fight. Thinking got him through it. The Hydra taught him something heavier. Some problems don't just resist force. They're powered by it. Arguments, debt, stress, grief, a failing relationship, an inbox that you've been avoiding for 2 weeks, hitting the wrong kind of problem harder doesn't give you less of it. You get more heads. Real strength was never just about the size of the hammer. It's the humility to notice when the math has stopped working in your favor and the willingness to ask for help before you run out of arms to swing with. Sometimes the person who saves you isn't the one holding the sword. Sometimes it's the one who shows up with a torch and says, "You look like you could use a hand." In conclusion, that's how Heracles walked into the swamp, believing that every problem could be outfought, and walked out knowing that sometimes the strategy is the problem. 2 labors down, technically. On paper, 1, but nobody's counting except for the guy in the jar. Until next time, remember, stay curious, stay legendary, and if your workload doubles every time you try to fix it, maybe stop hitting the machine and go find somebody with a torch. See you soon. And if you're enjoying Myths and Mayhem, hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes.